Hey, folks, it's Nate. It's time I got back to the drawing board. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit about something I saw on Twitter. They were talking about a couple days ago or over the weekend, they were talking about maybe making a black Batman. Um, Back when they were talking about recasting Batfleck. And in short, it's a stupid idea. I'm going to show you why. This is why. If you haven't read this, this is the new Superman from DC Universe Rebirth. I got this out of the library, local library. I put some sticky notes over the barcode there, in case you're wondering what that is. But I read this back when it first came out, and it was interesting to me because here's a fun fact: my dad was born in Taipei, Taiwan, so I was interested in what a take on a Chinese Superman would be. But right away, I didn't like the idea because it felt like a knockoff. And of course, China is famous for its knockoffs. So right away, I was like, okay, is this going to be any good? Couldn't you at least, you know, make an Asian character with his own identity rather than borrowing one from your lead superhero? And then I saw this, and this cover, that big number one. Like, I understand it's probably number one because it's the first book, the first collected trade. It's still, um, you know he looks a little bit haughty there. And of course, if you've read any of this, you know that Kong Keenan, the Chinese Superman, is um, he's a bit of a turd. Yeah, so he's not the most sympathetic character, um, and really, the writing in this book is not bad. The character is not horrible. I mean, um, he with time he could be he could go through some character growth. So it's good that you have that opportunity there. But this whole idea, that there's that the Chinese are making a knockoff Justice League is just the wrong way to go about this. Um, and they have the shape of you know American superheroes, but they don't have what makes them really work. So, um, what have they got there? Okay, we got Chinese Superman. The thing about Clark Kent, the core of Clark Kent, is that he has, people always say he has incredible power, but we trust him with it because he has good old American values. Um, that's not quite the core of what Superman is. Superman, at his core, is a Jewish character. If you know anything about Jewish theology, and I'm not a Jewish theologian, but I've had this explained to me a couple of times by um, Jews who I have talked to about religion, and as I understand it, so take this with a grain of salt. In Judaism, one of the most important human figures is the Messiah, and they believe the Messiah is an emergent figure. He will emerge from somewhere among the tribes of Judah, and he will lead. He will be, a leader like the world has never seen before, and he will um, lead humanity to something beyond human. And that is what Superman is. Um, he is a modern encapsulation of that idea of the Messiah. Um, the morality, which in Judaism is a gift from God, or in Superman's mythos is the core Midwestern values. That is the foundation, and on that you build this thing that is beyond human. And so it's natural that Superman's primary enemy is Lex Luthor, a person who discards morality and venerates humanity. Lex Luthor is a humanist, and he believes in the potential of the human race. He believes they don't need to be superhuman to be good, and he also believes that the morality that Superman espouses is a barrier to becoming everything that humanity could be, and that is, those ideas, the Jewish culture that underpins Superman is very core to who he is. Punkinen, the new Superman, has none of that. I mean, he has the S on his chest. He wears the cape, and that's all he is. He's a hollow attempt to be Superman, to look like Superman, to have the cool, flashy abilities of Superman, but he lacks the ability to move people because he lacks the big idea. He is not the man of tomorrow. He is not the emergence of something good and beyond human from humanity. Next character, Batman, the Chinese Batman. The American Batman, Bruce Wayne, is interesting because at his core, Bruce Wayne is a person who had something bad happen to him. And then he said, I'm going to do everything I can to stop bad things from happening to other people. And that's all it was about. As your boy Zach says, he's the guy you call when your TV is stolen and you need it back. Superman understands the trauma of being a victim of a crime, and he goes out and he tries to help other people fight that trauma. That's all he is. What is the Chinese Batman? Well, he's a guy with a bat on his chest and bat ears on his cowl. He came up through a study program. He was picked from a huge pool of candidates. He worked hard and he proved himself, but he doesn't have that trauma. He doesn't have that connection. He's not a dark avenger. He doesn't believe that criminals are a cowardly and superstitious lot. That's not Batman. It's a guy in a stupid mask. The basic idea of Bruce Wayne is that he went through a tragedy and now he's going out and he's trying to prevent tragedies, or at the very least help people who have suffered tragedies work through them. Maybe he gets their TV back, maybe you arrest the guy who, wrecked your car or burned down your house or killed your parents. There's nothing wrong with a character who works hard and studies hard and beats out the competition and is, elevated to a position in society commensurate to that effort. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's not Batman. And you cannot just slap this iconography on something like that and call it Batman. Chinese Wonder Woman, she is probably the closest they get. She's a figure out of Chinese myth. They actually give her whole backstory, not in this one. Is it in this one? Volume 2? I have Volume 2 here. I don't think it's in this one either. I can't remember the exact details, but she was essentially a mythical creature, a snake. She became human because she fell in love. It's interesting and it's mythic, but she doesn't represent. Unlike Wonder Woman, she doesn't represent the ideas of women, of contesting their place in the society for good or bad. She doesn't represent. I mean, she's just a mythic figure. Again, while her costume isn't much like Wonder Woman's, she's just a. They saw the form of a mythic character. I said, "Hey, we'll turn a Chinese myth into a superhero." That's not what Wonder Woman is. She's a commentary on femininity, on gender roles, on submission, on power, on willing, on a lot of different and not as like I'm not a Wonder Woman expert, but I have watched and read a little bit about the background of the character, and she was written to try and basically comment on the role of women in society. And this Chinese Wonder Woman, she does none of that. Now you don't have to agree or disagree with any of the Wonder Woman commentary. By the way, it's the point is that's a central part of who she is. Probably more important than her role as a semi mythological figure. So what did they? They have this Chinese Superman. He is an attempt to have the form of a Superman to appeal to a new audience. And I read it, and I found it to be horribly condescending. There are some elements of good storytelling in here. I actually thought that the Chinese Lois Lane was interesting for no other reason than in order to actually do journalism, she's always in danger of being, the party taking too much of an interest in her. There are elements about Kong Keenan's family that are interesting. His mother and father. He's not adopted, but they definitely have their own issues. But on the whole, this was an attempt to take the form of American superheroes and put Asian, specifically for the most part Han Chinese people, into that form, and then say, "Hey, look, now you're represented." And it was terrible. So why doesn't Black Batman work either? Well, again, Batman is about a guy who's had something very bad happen to him, and we all sympathize with that, and we also understand his drive to prevent it from happening. And in seeing Batman fight his war on crime, we then get to experience the thrill and the adventure and the satisfaction of fighting that war on crime, even though we're not super ninjas, we don't have money and connections. The point is, Batman's motivation and the satisfaction he gets out of doing his job is universal. Okay, and if you read through the Twitter discussion of a Black Batman, they're like, "Oh man, what if he's oppressed by racists in America, and he's not just fighting crime, but he's fighting the system." And the point, if you believe that's true, you also believe that applies uniquely to Black people. And if you don't believe it's true, then, well, you're not gonna empathize it one way or another. You're left at loose ends. You either can't relate to, according to your race, your race baiter. Well, I don't want to call them race baiter, but the racial ideology says you can't empathize with Black people if you're not a Black person. So clearly, if that's the story perspective you take when you're telling that story, you're not trying to tell a story of that really universal Batman who anyone can relate to. And if you don't share that point of view, that very exclusionary, closed off way of storytelling is going to cut off that part of your audience. You're not going to be able to reach them because you've decided you can't reach them. So a Black Batman is going to fail to be Batman because you are no longer telling that universal story of the man who turns his tragedy into a strength by defending everyone else around him from that tragedy. As soon as you introduce the racial lines to it, you fail because you're not going to have that universality anymore. And it's the same as this new Superman. It will be the shape of a Batman, but it won't have any of the heart. So yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about. It's something I get pretty worked up about because for a long time I thought that just seeing the Asian, or in my case half Asian characters would make me feel better. That there aren't a lot of Asians in American entertainment, and that's actually probably fair. We're a fairly small percentage of the population, But here's the secret. I didn't feel good, seeing these kind of flat imitation characters here. The DC character that has resonated the most strongly with me, especially from the DC Rebirth, was actually Jonathan Kent. Before Brian Michael Bendis did his thing, because he was a character who was half from one world and half from another, and I sympathized with that. That was a circumstance. I understood that to a certain extent. This putting people who look like who have Asian features in superhero costumes, that's not what it is. So anyways, yeah, that's all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a like button and a subscribe button down below. Use them as you see fit, and I'll talk to you later.